Welcome to the Answers for Elders radio show. Meet the trusted experts who will give you straight answers and will help guide you on the path of later life care. Now, here's your host, founder, caregiver, and CEO, Suzanne Newman.
And welcome everyone to Answers for Elders radio network, heard across the USA. We are so delighted each and every week to come to you, whether you're in your car, whether you're maybe listening to us on your headphones as you're doing errands around your home, or if you're a family caregiver, maybe looking for answers in the care of your loved one. And certainly for us, we're honored and privileged to be a part of your process. And you know, this month of February, if you're a loyal listener, you know, we've been talking about health and wellness. We've been talking about all the things that we can do, remain vital and everything like that. But I really believe we would be remiss if we didn't talk about the end of life, because obviously we as seniors, myself included, there's only two things that are absolute in our life, as we say, death and taxes, right? So obviously what we want to talk about is the end of life. There's all kinds of ways in which we process saying goodbye, letting go. And so I'm just so honored to have an amazing gentleman that I just got to know, and he's phenomenal. John Wenderlein is a hospice chaplain, and he has worked with many people that are at the end of their life. And we're going to have a conversation on how those things go in the world of when it's time to say goodbye. How can we have these conversations with those that we love? And Chaplain John, I'm going to call you Chaplain John. Welcome to Answers for Elders.
Well, thank you much, Susan. I appreciate the time you've taken to invite me on. And yes, perfect crowd for a perfect situation.
Yes, it is. And, you know, I remember, John, when my mom was towards the end of her life, I think there was a big part of me that was in denial. You know, she can't be this bad. She can't, she'll get better. I even remember renting out a storage locker with all of her things because I thought she's going to get better and everything's going to happen. Is that common with families? I guess the first thing I always think of is this denial process.
Absolutely. You know, it's so hard many times, even though a doctor has told you 6 months, to get the family convinced that mother or dad are getting ready to pass. Yeah. So there's a big fight. I don't mean a physical fight or a verbal fight. I mean an emotional struggle. And it doesn't happen so much with the patient because many times they've been sick for a while.
Right.
It happens with the family. And one of our struggles in the hospice business is to get all that paperwork correct because family just don't want to hear it.
Right. And, you know, I think part of the role of hospice, which I find is so amazing, is that hospice is there for families. And I remember as my father was laying on his deathbed, they helped me understand what the process of death was. They helped to keep my father comfortable and in the end of his life and different things like that they did to kind of prep us as a family, how to have those conversations. So I guess my question is, as a hospice chaplain, what is the role that you do with families in helping families and the patient?
Well, I'll tell you, my role is a role many times people are a little confused about. You have the doctor, you have a nurse, you have a worker, and you have somebody that will come in and maybe you did help clean your mother and maintain.
Sure.
But when the chaplain walks through the door, it becomes real. It becomes real for the family. It becomes real for the patient. So as a chaplain, I have to be careful how I initially meet. But you know, my job is to keep the spiritual strength up and to keep the conversation as light as possible.
Right. And obviously, I can imagine there's a lot of questions people have, but they don't know how to ask them. Is that common?
That is common. You know, like you had said, many of the medical questions are answered by the nurses. are
Yeah.
answered by our literature. We hand out literature that says these are the signs.
Mm-hmm.
Don't be confused if your mother, your father seems to be getting better before they get worse.
Sure.
Don't be surprised if there's changes in skin texture or skin color.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Uh, and of course, with memory and things like that, don't be surprised that she's going to have or he's going to have
Mm-hmm.
those moments that he's going to be very good and talk about that vacation 20 years ago.
Absolutely.
But don't be surprised that tomorrow that it'll be another step down, as you
Right.
might have witnessed with your mama. I don't know.
Yeah, I did. And you know, I think about the last I was put in a position as her healthcare directive to have to make a difficult decision. And I, to this day, I know in my heart, I mean, I know in my heart that, or in my head, I should say, that I absolutely made the right choice. But there's still this little tweak inside of me that says maybe she could have gotten better. Maybe I made the wrong decision. And you know, I've talked this to death to other providers, and they say, you know, Suzanne, you did the right thing. But I think there's an element of responsibility that families feel. How does that process, Chaplain John, go with families? Do they discuss those types of pieces with you?
Well, quite honestly, Suzanne, it's usually the last person who necessarily wants to do it takes
Right,
on that responsibility. It's
right,
usually the person that actually if the patient's still able to, makes that decision who's going to do that. You are the million and one person to say that they struggle with the idea that they had to make those responsibilities. Forgive my
true.
thought, but
No problem.
I'm sorry, but I hear your story with every death, and
Yeah.
I've dealt with thousands of deaths. There's
Mhm.
never a time where a caregiver is going to say, when it's all done, whew, I'm good with that. They're
Yeah.
going to struggle with woulda, coulda, shoulda. They're going to
Yeah.
guess themselves.
They're
And
going to do those things. And I know that, you know, there's got to be, I mean, I'm not alone in that process. And there's many of us, especially those that may feel us, you know, more that if we're an oldest child, which I am, obviously I was the only daughter. So I was the it, right? And so obviously in this process, I knew that my mom had entrusted me and my judgment. And yet, you know, talking to hospice, they explained to me, I think that was great about the role of hospice was that they said, you know, you could keep her the same, you know, and you know, she was on that time, like she was in like almost 30 units of oxygen. I mean, she was just horrible,
oh
you know,
yeah,
COPD and heart attack, you know, and they go, she will never gain that back. You know, so we can either start dialing back the oxygen, give her morphine, keep her comfortable, and let her go quietly, or we could probably sustain her life for a couple of weeks. And I remember saying this like, okay, well, what what would 2 weeks mean to my mother? And then I'm going, she can't eat because she can't swallow. So I
amen.
looked at all of those things and I thought that's not a quality of life to live in. And so I remember there was a part of me that wanted to go tell my mother the decision I made, but I chose not to.
Good for you.
Um, because I felt like she didn't need to feel like that she was going to tell me anything. And that was my husband. He said, honey, she entrusted you in your judgment and she knows that you know the right thing to do. And I remember that instant of feeling like, did I say do the right thing? You know? So Chaplain John, as families are going through these processes, obviously there's a lot of moral scenarios, there's a lot of decisions that are being made. And then obviously there's words that aren't spoken, you know, that haven't been spoken that probably need to be. How do you help families in that regard?
For me, that's key. If the patient is still able to have conversation, I
Mhm.
make it my goal to get those things resolved. I have
Right.
many wonderful stories of that, where the patients were able to come back and have a conversation quickly.
Right, right. Yeah, and I think too, you know, in this evolution of life, you know, we all have probably things we may want to say that we just don't know how to say them. And I think that's important. So in the meantime, Chaplain John, he has written an amazing book, a couple of books. How do people get information on you and your books?
Well, thank you. You can go to Amazon. I'm on Amazon. The name of the book is Remember Me. Remember Me. End of life stories through the eyes of a hospice chaplain. Forgive me. Go to Amazon. I have a website called remembermejw.com. They can purchase the book. And the second book, of course, is The Late Honor, and we'll get with that one another day.
Perfect. And you know what? We're going to come back this next segment, and we're going to talk a little bit about the process and having conversations right after this. We at Answers for Elders thank you for listening. Did you know that you can discover hundreds of podcasts in our library on senior care? So visit our website and discover our decision guides that will help you also navigate decision making. Find us at answersforelders.com.